Yes, as the kids will say, inevitably.
As all the kids know by heart. You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts. Hello, everybody. Welcome to
Yeah.
the show. I appreciate we already got some people in the chat. I'm gonna make sure. I'm gonna wait and make. Oh wait, Are we going? Are we? Is? It looks like things are going good on our
Yeah.
end. So, I forgot. This is like live. This is. I don't get to edit this part out later. This is just the
Well, you
show.
could always roll it back. You could always roll it back. There's
I can always roll it back.
we could
Listen.
do the nice little like onboard editing option. It's getting better every year.
Exactly. So for those unfamiliar with the show that you clicked on, this is Mutant Academy. This is the show where Sal, hey Sal,
Hey,
and myself, DJ, talk about X-Men. I had to remind when I was getting ready, I'm like, wait, what shows today? Are we talking about
what are we
Spider-Man? Am I talking about Fast X? What am I talking about today?
Oh
yeah,
my God.
Fast X2, X-Men United.
Yeah.
So at the top, of course, we should mention, this is our live YouTube show. If you like this show, Sal and I do another show at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers where we talk about Spider-Man called Spider-Versity. Do I have a little thing to go up for that? I do not. Anyway, that's fine. Go to patreon.com.
Trust me, it's Spider-tastic.
Also, if you, I know a lot of our listeners, you listen to Only Stupid Answers, a podcast. You want to listen to a podcast that is also over the podcast audio version of this is at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers. That's where you can listen to that. Also, like everything with Only Stupid Answers, this is financed by you guys. Okay, we don't really have official sponsors. It's sponsored by you. So if you want to hop over on the super chat and send us a little super chat, we will read your comments within reason. All right. Within,
yeah. Don't use it as your platform.
Exactly.
You're not accepting an Oscar here, but
hey, listen, if it's a conversation relevant, we'll mention it. So today we are, of course, talking about what maybe, and what Sal and I would inevitably try to determine, be one of the most beloved X movies, X2, X-Men United, which came out in 2003.
Yes.
This was, of course, once again directed by Bryan Singer. And when I was doing research, I found stories involving this movie and Mr. Bryan Singer that we will bring up later in the show.
Oh no, I'm looking forward to that. I heard I'll bet Bryan Singer was a big fan of having Hugh Jackman on set, but maybe he was he skewed a little too, he was not the right demographic.
We'll get into it. Since we are into it, just as a disclaimer, we're just talking about the movie. We're not going to get, as we've learned since this movie came out, Bryan Singer not a good dude.
No,
we're not going to be, other than the story I have to share.
Right.
That makes it implies that maybe he's been not a good dude and a dangerous person to have on set for a long time. And maybe we should have brought it up sooner. But other than that, we're going to be talking about the movie itself and not like the merits of like, are we supporting Bryan Singer?
Right. No, come on.
I think it's a little bit easier in this case because it's X-Men, man. It's bigger than any one person. It's not like
exactly
J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter where it's like, well, you know what I mean? They're
kind of
intermeshed. Anyway, this was written by Zach Penn, David Hayter, and Bryan Singer. When anti-mutant Colonel William Stryker kidnaps Professor X and attacks his school, the X-Men must ally with their archenemy Magneto to stop him. On Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has an 85% with an 85% audience score. Rare.
Yeah, everyone is on the same effing page. I'd say 85 is a fair score because I think when I first saw it in theaters, I would have been like A+, 100 out of 100, no notes. But now, with there being so many X-Men movies and the Marvel Universe and the DC Universe, like, I have some notes. I've got notes.
It was interesting. It was interesting because it's been a while since I've seen this movie. And we'll get into it more later, but it was my memory, the way it's logged in my memory is X1, fine, X2, way better. Yes. And now rewatching them, it's like they're pretty comparable, actually. Like
I'd say it's like Spider-Man and Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Where it's like same crew, same people, same story, same actors, same director, and there is a consistency that hasn't been seen since Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to kind of unpack that. On Rotten Tomatoes, it says tightly scripted, solidly acted, and impressively ambitious. X2 X-Men United is bigger and better than its predecessor, and a benchmark for comic sequels in general.
Agreed.
And so now we get into our first. For those, this is just our second episode. So if you're new here, we have it broken into sections, and our first one is Way of X, where we start talking about the general synopsis. I'm going to go through this as briefly as possible.
Yes.
So of course, this movie infamously opens on what is a pretty fucking kick-ass sequence of Nightcrawler tearing shit up at the White House.
Yeah. That's so unexpected. I was like, I remember hearing about this movie and like everything leading up to it, and I was like, oh man, Nightcrawler's gonna be in this. I love Nightcrawler. And then to see him be the antagonist of the opening sequence was jarring but awesome. Any misgivings or concerns you might have had about Nightcrawler being used or being manipulated or being the villain are quickly assuaged by how awesome this sequence is. Yeah, and it holds up. It's still a great I think a few more superhero movies could take notes from this, where it's like open with a really grounded but spectacular sequence. And one of a few. It wasn't like this sequence is awesome and you're like, oh, you led with the Darth Maul fight. You're screwed. No, there are a couple of really spectacular sequences.
Yeah, there's a couple really, really great sequences. This is one of them. I remember, like you initially, I was like, wait, Nightcrawler attacks the White House. Boo.
Yeah.
And then within the context of the movie, it's like, okay, it makes sense. It's also, there's something interesting about the fact that probably one of the kindest mutants in the franchise is used in one of the most frightening sequences. Like, oh yeah, the mutants kind of are a problem. They're kind of like
like
something you need to talk about.
It makes a good point, it's a good thing even though he is a sweetheart and he is like he has a moral center, he can still be used, and look at how powerful and dangerous he is, and it's just one of them.
Yeah. And it's also like typically when we talk about the X peoples, Nightcrawler is not one of the ones that you'd mention as like the most dangerous power.
Right.
Like, so even like your like mid-tier guys in the right context are like, ooh,
yeah, could still, destabilize world powers.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then we move to Logan, playing off the previous movie. Professor X told Logan where to find his origin. Early signs Professor X is not playing on the level.
Sticking around.
Because we find out later in this movie he knows more than he's letting on. Although I don't know if we ever really spell out. They leave that loosey-goosey about how much X is in on what happened to Wolverine. Anyway,
I got the impression he just doesn't care. Whatever.
Yeah. Wolverine listen, he needs to be part of the X-Men, all right? I can't give him everything.
Magneto points that out to him in this movie. He's like,
the one point I want to point out about this moment is this is one of two scenes where Hugh Jackman's hair is legitimately insane. Like it's like the most comic accurate it's ever been, and you're like, maybe don't do that. Maybe
no, it's great because it works. I loved it. I was like, yep, that's what it looks like. And they did it.
I always assumed the mask is what made his hair that way. So it's like, you take the mask out, why is his hair doing that?
Right. Whenever you see it when it's not that way, it makes me nuts. Like, especially because it makes sense that if it's up here, it goes down here. But seeing Wolverine with long hair, something wrong with that.
No, the long hair. I think there's a way. I think they did it of all movies. I think they did it really well in the first Wolverine Origins movie, which is it's a little feathered out, but it still looks like a human being's. Like it doesn't look like he's wearing a thing. Yeah. So we're at the museum. I don't know which one. I should have looked it up. But the X students yeah, they're at a museum. Is it the Smithsonian? Is it the whatever museum?
Natural history? Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? They're visiting a museum, and Jean talks a little bit about to Cyclops a little about her struggles controlling her powers. Put a pin in that one, kids. We are introduced to Pyro, who's hanging out with Iceman and Rogue. They're kind of like a little low-key trinity here. Pyro starting, notably not Australian Pyro, is starting shenanigans with some of the guys. And then Professor X introduces one of his more upsetting abilities, which is he just freezes everybody in the world, in the museum.
I think it's local. I assumed it was localized to the
Same.
museum because when they see the TV, things are happening on the TV.
Yes.
You know, it's just in the museum. But also, I remember being like, he can do that?
Yeah, like
Is that
what,
a thing?
what is he? Is he pausing their brains? What am I supposed to understand is happening?
Right, like, is he freezing? I remember people were like, he can freeze time, and I'm like, no, he can't freeze time, but like he can freeze time for them.
Yeah.
That's weird. And also, it creates a problem that I noticed is a trend, which is like, oh, he's so powerful he could turn everybody off. Let's not look to the comics to see why he doesn't do that all the time. Let's just make it so that he can go away.
Yeah.
For the whole length of the movie. And it's like, that's fine, but you don't need to do that if you don't make him the most powerful person on the planet.
Yeah,
Which is what he is in this scene.
And I think there is another read that I do think you could spell out a little bit, is that maybe he's not freezing anybody. Maybe he's just in these characters' brain, and it's happening instantaneously. And that helps explain and the end of the movie, which we'll get to in a minute. But this has always been one of those, like, because it is confusing, like, because natural us as comic readers be like, well, no, that can't be it. But if you're not, you're like, wait, can he freeze time? Because that's what happens.
that is how the filmmakers are treating it. They're treating it like he can freeze time, and we'll do it again.
Yeah, and again, these movies are very clearly on the mutant side, but between this and the White House sequence, like, I don't know, man. Maybe we need to do something about mutants.
Right? Maybe at least someone saying, I kind of get it.
Yeah. One person having billions of dollars is able to do untold amount of damage. A person able to, like, freeze an entire museum full of people, that's I don't like that. I don't like.
Terrifying. But no, he's a good guy though. It's cool. It'll be cool.
When he wants to be. Anyway,
right.
God forbid he throws a tantrum. Anyway, so Wolverine returns to the school. We find out Bobby, Iceman, and Rogue have a thing. And Professor X is using Cerebro to track Nightcrawler. He's having issues because Nightcrawler's a teleporter.
Yep.
And we learn that if he concentrates too hard in Cerebro, he could kill everybody, either mutants or humans, although theoretically both. But it seems the movie bifurcates it, and he can track humans or he can track mutants.
Right.
And if he focuses too hard on either, he could kill them all. Which, again, what?
Yeah, is that just him in general? Is that a byproduct of Cerebro?
Yeah.
It's a problem that no one asked for, that, like, is the linchpin of the movie, so it's why it's here, but it's also like it is creating more issues than it solves.
It's a problem. And again, I did not feel this way ending the movie, but as we're going through it, like, wait, am I on Stryker's? I'm not. Speaking of, we are introduced to lovely Brian Cox playing Stryker, and I have just binged all of Succession. I caught up in like 4 weeks. And so that got me because I remember seeing this movie and loving Brian Cox in it. I truly think if our trinity of old characters, which is Ian McKellen, Patrick Stewart, and now Brian Cox in this movie, I'm like, yeah, Brian Cox is the perfect guy to do that.
Yeah.
So I was so excited to go revisit it. And I guess now in that context, it's like, wow, Brian Cox is way underutilized.
It's because he is enjoying a renaissance at this time. I think, we got Super Troopers, which he was the celebrity cameo in that movie.
Yeah, he is in Super Troopers.
And adaptation.
One more time.
Right? I didn't see Super Troopers 2, but I really enjoyed Super Troopers 1.
Same. Same with Zoolander 2. Why ruin a good thing?
Why are we ruining a good thing? I get it. I'll just watch the movie again.
Yeah.
But he's also an adaptation, and he plays that amazing screenwriter who dresses down the Nick Cage character. And he's in all kinds of movies where you're like, oh, Brian Cox is kind of like we want to add a little bit of we want to add a little panache to our picture. Get the incomparable Brian Cox, former Hannibal Lecter, first Hannibal Lecter.
Glad you mentioned it. Yeah. And I'm a Michael Mann fan. I like his movies. So I'm a big fan of Manhunter. Manhunter.
Yeah. Manhunter. Yes.
Mindhunter is a different thing.
It's a show.
Manhunter, yeah, which is based off Red Dragon. But you're right, and it's interesting. Tangent, everybody. Brian Cox is, because he, like as you mentioned, he before Anthony Hopkins, he was the first Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
So different. Like
Yeah.
Anthony Hopkins is such an erudite, like a high class, whatever. Brian Cox is kind of a fucking thug. And but what I think is interesting about tying it back, Brian Cox's performance in Succession, and also this, is he doesn't lose that element.
No.
He just plays characters that are better at hiding it.
Right.
Stryker is a fucking thug, but he's very good at presenting himself as not a fucking thug.
Oh yeah, no, he's very comfortable in his role. This is the guy who throws his weight around in the White House. Like, really, he's very flippant to the president because he doesn't really regard him. You know, it's like really good stuff. He's just he's a tour de force of an actor.
Yeah.
And this is I'm sad because I think, you know, William Stryker is a great character. Even the evangelical one from God Loves Man Kills.
Yeah.
Fantastic opportunity for the MCU. I think because of this, we won't see an MCU William Stryker.
Yeah, we got a section. We'll talk about that a little bit more. I also want to mention there's a different actor. Don't have the name in front of me. Plays Stryker in Wolverine Origins, and both him and Brian Cox share scenes in Succession.
Oh,
which is like, this has to be intentional. Like this has, and his character's named Logan. Are you Succession people? See, Wolverine nerds? Is that what I'm learning?
Yeah, man. Is there a section where we could talk about like that William Stryker problem they have, where Brian Cox has always been the best William Stryker, and every time that like there's another movie, they're like, let's put William Stryker in there. Let's get the guy who looks like Sean William Scott, or let's get the guy who was the vampire in 30 Days of Night. But either way, it has to be someone who is 80% worse than Brian Cox. Like just someone who's just like not even close.
And part of it is Brian Cox, if again, not to toot the Succession horn, but if you've seen it, he can do this role in his sleep, man. Like, and he's also one of those actors that is so, and I wonder what the trick is. He's so effortlessly scary. I don't think I've seen him do anything like excessively violent, except Hannibal. Anything, and it's like, why am I so intimidated by you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Great. Good actor, and I do think this, and we'll get into this more too. I do think this touches into one of my bigger issues as we get into these X movies, and I think something Marvel could solve, but it might be tricky. Is I want more time with all of these people. Like it's the soap opera aspect, the serialized aspect of it. Like it's a movie's kind of not enough. Like it's just anyway.
No, it's true.
We're introduced to Brian Cox and his right-hand gal, Eureka. We'll get into more her later. And he gets approval to investigate the X-Mansion by correctly pointing out that they have a warplane.
Love it. That's such a great moment, and it's so earned because you're like, it's played for laughs in X-Men 1. You know, basketball court opens up and a effing jet shoots out of it. But when they're looking at satellite photos, he's like, you know, the president is willing to give Xavier the benefit of the doubt, maybe because he's a campaign contributor. But in any case, you know, he's like, what is this? And he's like, we don't know, but it comes up out of the basketball court. Like it's all a facade. This is a paramilitary group that is pretending to be masquerading as a school.
Yeah.
You know, like they don't even like the basketball court is a front for their assault weapons. And I'm like, I can't argue with that.
Yeah, that is hard to argue with. It's like when Batman's rolling down the street in a tank. It's like, but he's on our side. Is he?
Well, he just caused $10 million in collateral damage. Is that really helping us?
Is that all I'm saying is I have questions. I'm not saying I'm against it. I'm just saying I have questions.
Who weaponized him? That's all.
A little bit of oversight is all I'm saying. So I would love it if like government stooge knocks on the door like, hey y'all, no issues with mutants, the powers we understand, genetic. The war machines, the deadly training facility, and the jet. We need to have a chat.
They're raising eyebrows is all I'm saying. And it's going to cost more to obfuscate it.
So Mystique does her, because she's disguised as the senator from the previous movie, which is a great way to bring that actor back very, very briefly. She sneaks into Stryker's computer. We get a bunch of files come up. I didn't go through all of them, but we do get a bunch of teases of like characters like Jamie Madrox, like other mutants.
We got Franklin Richards in there, and I was like, what? There were a lot. They're all Easter eggs. I paused it. I was looking. I'm like, there isn't a name that there was Maximoff parentheses 2.
That's
And I'm
awesome.
like, oh no!
And
And then they'll never pay any of it off in any significant way.
And you know, when they talked about the because for a long time Fox wanted to do that X-Men Fantastic Four crossover, which is like, yeah, I get it, those are the properties we have, but it's not like
it doesn't really write itself.
But you bring up the Franklin Richard thing is like, well,
there we go.
well,
I got an idea there. How about we have like the Fantastic Four having a baby who is a mutant who can do anything that has that plays the themes of this X-Men franchise.
Yeah.
And kind of deepens the Tim Story silly ass Fantastic Four stuff. Like that would have been really cool.
Yeah, but you need a Fantastic Four because I think at the time they were pitching that they were trying the Fan Four Stick version, and it's like, guys, come anyway, whatever.
Oh, that's not gonna.
This is not a Fantastic Four show, okay?
No, we'll do that next.
Yeah, those are and the 3 movies.
Right,
leading up to the new Fantastic Four. Let's watch all that. That's actually not the worst idea. Put a pin in that. All right.
Yeah, right. Oh my God.
So Jean and Storm are sent to find Nightcrawler in a church in Boston. There's a kind of weird sequence where she creates a storm inside the church, and he falls as if he can't like teleport away, but whatever.
Yeah. Also, did Jean not learn that
meter that we have to wait for the meter to recharge before I teleport again?
Yeah, don't use too much of it, you'll die.
Yeah.
But Jean did the exact same thing. Remember in the first movie, she holds Toad.
Yeah.
Just looks at him, and then he spits crap in her mouth.
Yeah.
She does the exact same thing to Nightcrawler, and I'm like, did you not learn anything?
You don't know what he spits, all right?
He could spit anything. We don't know. He's blue.
So Wolverine, this is building up to one of the most famous sequences in the movie. Wolverine's having trouble sleeping. He has a chat with a kid that can change channels with his eyes that I think might actually be from the comics, but I don't know who it is.
Who cares? He looks like Harry Potter.
He does. Soldiers invade the school, and we get a look at our second of 3 Kitty Prides.
Oh God, that's right. Yeah, she just falls through it. I'm like, you're not even gonna try.
Yeah. We get glimpses in the sequence. We get glimpses of Siren and Colossus.
Yep.
I thought it was funny. There's this moment where like Colossus is like, I can help you, and Wolverine's like, no, don't. And in my brain, I was like, listen, man, I'm gonna murder a lot of these people, so I would really prefer if none of the kids are around. See that, because
I remember the Colossus moment when he fucking cheers. The
Yeah.
audience literally cheered in the theater for Colossus being in 1 second of this movie.
Listen, you kids at home. If you're under 20 years old, you don't know how starved we were for this stuff. So
we were
just
like,
the idea of Colossus is present.
He appears and he even used his powers.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Now we'd get a whole movie just to lead into X-Men. So Wolverine basically wrecks shop. And what's interesting, I'll get into this more. There was a series of articles on AV Club called History of Violence that was basically picking an action movie every year that was definitive of the thing. And that person said, I'm not going to choose, the person that did that said, I'm not going to choose superhero movies because I see that as a different genre. And I think this sequence is a great example of like blockbuster. Not every action movie is a blockbuster. Not every blockbuster is an action movie, because there's a lot of, we talked about the Nightcrawler sequence. There's a lot of really cool blockbuster moments.
Yes.
But in a scene like this, that is, 2 things are happening here. I'll get into the other one in a minute. When we get to a scene that is more action oriented, it's not, it's kind of janky. And part of that is had to be edited. This was a sequence that had to be edited down because it made the movie R-rated. So that's part of it.
Yeah, at least they left it that he does murder them. Like,
oh yeah, we're not. This isn't GI Joe rules. Where this isn't like we're in Spider-Verse. We were talking about Spider-Man animated series. It's not like you can't punch people. Like he's killing them.
Yeah, there's actually a really fun attention to detail, and it's classic movie making trickery where whenever they want Mystique to change and they don't want to show it, they just have her go through a pillar. They play a sound that's T-1000. Yep. James Cameron did it. It's fine, but when he stabs that dude, he pins him to the refrigerator.
Yeah.
When he falls, there's 6 little holes in the refrigerator, and it's like, that was just, they put the holes there, they put him against it, then they said, okay, when you slide down, if anyone's looking, they'll see the holes. And I'm like, that was the first moment for me where I'm like, oh, he's gonna kill everyone in this room.
Yeah.
Because I was really worried that it was gonna be kind of a sanitized Wolverine.
Yeah.
And it's anything but. And I'm like, hey, MCU, better not This better not be the most hardcore Wolverine we ever see.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think as of this recording, it kind of is.
Oh yeah, easily,
because we get hints of his history, and this is something that bums. It's part of the hard part about Wolverine being so popular.
Yeah,
Is their creators feel this need to like make him the lead, like they do in this movie,
Yep.
or sanitize him in a way that kind of takes away some of the appeal. So I kind of like that, like. You can make the argument like these soldiers at the beginning, like they don't start firing live rounds until Wolverine starts attacking them. They're like just tranking people.
Yeah.
But I like that, like Wolverine don't
Wolverine's
play
like, I don't
that.
care. Well,
Yeah,
plus, like, you know what really brought it home for me was when the dude is being attacked by Wolverine. He's not being murdered by Wolverine. He's being attacked by Wolverine, and he immediately just starts opening fire.
Yeah.
And live rounds just shred the kitchen. And I'm like, yeah, these guys came with assault weapons,
Yep.
and their safeties were off.
Yeah. Yeah. No, this is a cool sequence. I do wish I'd be interested to see the unrated cut or whatever. Or
Yeah.
but conceptually way on board with this scene.
Totally.
And we get our Wolverine's first one-on-one with Stryker. Stryker shows up and he's talks to Wolverine. And this is only shortened by the fact that Iceman puts an ice wall between them.
Yes.
Cool moment. And they decide to head to Boston, where we find out Iceman has his family. The car they steal has a secret X-shaped phone in it.
Yes.
Also, it is playing Backstreet Boys. Does Cyclops listen to Backstreet Boys?
That's the joke. The implication is that he's a sissy. That he listens to Backstreet Boys.
Do not. By the way, nothing wrong with listening to Backstreet Boys.
No, I mean, yeah, exactly.
And but also these movies do not like Cyclops, man.
No, they don't. But he does drive an RX-8, which is the first rotary engine in a car since the aforementioned RX-7 from Mazda. My friend was really into Mazdas and rotary engines, and so like when he was like, "Dude, that was the first time I got to see an RX-8," and I'm like, "That's cool, good for them."
Yeah,
very forgettable car with a suicide door. Way to go!
Yeah, I do not. You're like rotary engine. I don't. Okay,
I don't care about that.
I don't know.
You know, like it sucks, squash, bang, blow. Well, this is actually it sucks it in and then it spins the. It's like okay, good.
Okay, all right. Cool.
Yeah, I'll get back to you when I have to explain the Phoenix to you.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and it's man, right now I'm looking at routers, and it's like you try to look up reviews, and people are getting into stuff. It's like, is this something I need to care about, or is this cool for you tech nerds? Like, I don't know. Is this like?
Right?
Do I? Yeah. Is this important to me?
Will I even notice?
Yeah. Anyway, so while this is all going on, Professor X and Scott go to visit Magneto, who we find out is being basically tortured,
beaten.
He's tortured is the correct thing, but he's been beaten up to give information about the school, which leads to attack. This leads to Professor X and Cyclops being kidnapped by Stryker. Cyclops is taken out by Yuriko, who jumps on a wall and then kind of bug kicks him. She kind of she's a grasshopper.
A lot of wire work in this movie, especially for Yuriko.
Listen, wait, where are we in the Crouching Tiger timeline?
Oh no,
Crouching Tiger
same year, year before.
So I was like, are you being influenced by? Let's find out.
2000. So we're 3 years after Crouching Tiger.
Okay, yeah. That's why that's in there. So we find out too, and this because jumping ahead, sorry. Meanwhile, we get we're at a bar on TV. We see human Hank McCoy, played by an actor that does not matter. We do not care about and will not show up again later.
Love it. Yeah, no, it's just this movie is. I think there are more Easter eggs per minute in the Fox X-Men beginning franchises than any other franchise that exists.
Agreed. Also, I do listen, man. I know fans, especially when like Marvel MCU was like Avengers level, fans were so hard on the fact that X movies, the continuity was loosey goosey, and I don't know. I appreciate the fact that like, no, we don't need to worry about casting the Hank McCoy. Here's a Hank McCoy. Moving on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we were already 0 for 2 when it comes to Kitty Prides and Jubilees.
Yeah. And that's true. I didn't even mention that we're also on our second Jubilee.
Yeah.
In this franchise so far. Anyway, this is all building up to Mystique seducing a guard in her normal Rebecca Romaine mode.
Good for her.
Herself. Also, the luckiest day of that actor's life that plays the
I
guard.
was thinking
right?
the same thing. I'm like, no matter how you slice it, this dude's like, I got to make out with Rebecca Ramin Stamos, hardcore in a bathroom, pretty
Yeah,
sweet.
that was my job for today.
Yeah.
God bless. So we find out Yuriko, we cut to his base in Alkali Lake. We find out that Yuriko is also being controlled by Stryker, which is, I don't remember, and it's fucking tragic.
I remember because they do this thing with the eyes, and I remember thinking like, oh, those are really cool. But then I remember like, oh yeah, that's right. Everyone has like crazy eyes when they're being, when they got the drip on their necks, and it's
Brain
like,
juice.
oh, I saw, yeah, I watched it yesterday, and I'm like, when I saw her eyes change, and then scene we're going to talk about later, I was like, oh no.
Yeah, I didn't, for some reason, when I was a kid, it didn't like occur to me. Like it didn't click, and I was like, oh shit. Anyway,
Yeah.
we find out that Stryker, we find out his tragic backstory. He lost his wife to his son. Actually, you know what, man? Stryker's backstory is like, it's one of those like really fucked up, and it's
Yeah.
like, it doesn't. They do a good job because it doesn't justify what he's doing, because part of his backstory is kind of his fault.
Uh-huh.
Like, fuck, man. I don't know, man. I don't think there's a right answer to this question. So,
Nope.
basically, we find out that his son Jason, also called Mutant 143, has basically mind control abilities. Right?
Yeah.
That's what we're led to believe.
Yeah, it's in his like he excretes mind control powers. I think that's what that's the gunk they're using.
Yes,
from
which
him.
is that's a very elegant, because I was part of like, how does he mind control people? Oh, his son's something. Fine,
Well,
that's fine.
And what's worse is I remember like 10 years later, because this is a 20-year-old movie.
Yeah.
10 years later, finding out that he's supposed to be Mastermind from the Hellfire Club, and I'm like, not even close, not even a
Jason?
little bit.
Jason is?
Yeah, that he's like
wild.
He's the stand-in for Mastermind.
What I got more, and of course we'll get into this more later. This is heavily influenced by a graphic novel, God Loves, Man Kills, which is where we get Stryker and stuff like that. I thought like we took the idea of Stryker's son and grafted in Legion, David Haller. Like they're
he seemed like Legion. Yeah, he reminds me very much of that. Yeah.
We got Logan Shirley says, you're so right about Cyclops. The other day I explained the Starjammers to my friend, and he was blown away that Scott had so much going on.
Oh yeah, man.
Dude, that I feel like that's one of the places the MCU could really shine. Like, what if Scott didn't suck? Well, we're getting ahead of myself. We're going to talk about but I do. We'll talk about it more. Anyway, so
there's an MCU section we'll get into.
We'll get into it. So, thank you, Logan Shirley. So anyway, so he has mind control powers. This, I think, understandably worries Stryker. And so he sends it to Professor X under the false impression that maybe Professor X can cure his son, which is not how it works, and not a plot line we're going to get to till the next movie.
Yeah.
Since that doesn't work, Stryker takes his son back. I think it's probably safe to assume not the best home life post this.
Probably not.
And we get the implication is basically a Twilight Zone episode happens off screen where Jason fucks with their brains enough that his mother murders her, puts a drill to her brain.
Yeah.
Like, ooh,
I'm guessing that his paralysis or his need for a wheelchair is not due to any pre-existing medical condition.
Well, because we see the massive scar on the side of his head, which is a good bit of like visual storytelling. It's like, oh, fuck, this family's so fucking fucked.
Well, that's how they get the goo. They like open it up, they pull out his brain chemicals, and they're like, there we go.
So, meanwhile, Wolverine, Rogue, Iceman, and Pyro go to Bobby's home. This is where we're going to get into our mutants as metaphor. Bobby and Rogue try to get frisky. This is an incredibly believable scene
100%.
where Iceman makes the very stupid comment like, "You won't hurt me, dude." Why? Like, what the fuck are you thinking, man?
It's just, you don't understand. I need this so bad.
Yeah. Don't the blood rushing to my genitals tells me that somehow I'm immune to whatever your ability.
I bet love will protect me.
Exactly. It does not. Although condom. Anyway, whatever. We don't need to get into that. That's not what this show is.
No.
Anyway, so Bobby has a mutant conversation with his parents where we get the iconic, I think it's safe to say iconic line from this movie where his mom looks at him like, have you tried not being a mutant?
Yep.
Which is, listen, man, Bryan Singer, not a good dude, is a gay man. And this is a really good, it's like, of course he can't not be a mutant. That's an insane question. And it's
Right.
like, this is a good use of the mutant metaphor, I feel like.
Absolutely. There's a lot of great storytelling going on in here. We get to see the parallel between Johnny or Bobby and John
Mhm.
Pyro, and
Yeah.
how Pyro's like, this is the life that I didn't he's because there's a lot of opposites. Professor X has an evil
Yes.
wheelchair bound telepath he's fighting. Bobby
Yeah.
ice, John fire. Bobby had a family, John didn't.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot going on in here that I'm like, this is really cool. I love the interactions between Wolverine and any adult figure. Where he's just, I love that he uses his mutant ability to sniff out beer in the refrigerator.
Yes.
There's so much here that I love in this sequence, but yeah, and how real everything is. From the teenage making out, which great trailer moment when she first makes out and she blows like cold air out of her own mouth. And,
Yeah.
It's like that's kind of fun. Ooh, it's kind of fun. It's not dangerous yet, but you got that. You have the younger brother who's clearly like jealous and resentful of Bobby and how he was clearly the golden boy, but
the
now
younger
I can
brother
elevate.
straight up narcs on Bobby, like hardcore.
No, this kid is definitely. If it were a few years later, he would definitely. He's probably on 4chan. Like,
Yes.
he's on a lot of anti-mutant message boards.
Oh my god. So the cop. Speaking of the younger brother, narcs on Bobby. Cops show up. Which, dude,
Like for real.
that's
But yes,
too much,
yes, very
man.
real.
It's too much, man. So don't call the cops on your siblings, man. Unless whatever. Whatever. Anyway, this kid should not have called the cops on Bobby. Pyro, like, this is fucking hilarious. Speaking of G.I. Joe shit, Bobby, Pyro fucking starts blowing up cop cars, and we get a news report later, like, luckily nobody was injured. I'm like, fucking bullshit.
Sure.
They weren't.
No, they weren't injured. They were killed.
Yeah, exactly. He's blowing up cop cars, man. And this sequence opens with a cop straight up shooting Wolverine in the head. It is kind of
Just
funny,
headshots him,
which is a good sequence and a good reminder that, like, yeah, man, there's unbreakable metal between his brain, and whatever you throw at him. Yeah. But it is weird that nobody tries to shoot Pyro. He's moving slower than Wolverine does.
It's true, but he is a child. We're trying not to look. It's all about damage control.
Yeah, because we know cops don't shoot kids. Anyway,
not white ones in Connecticut.
Yeah, good point. Great point. Rogue, good use of powers. The Rogue keeps him from cooking other cops in the car by stealing his powers.
Yep.
We cut back. Magneto is still imprisoned. He uses the metal. So when Mystique
makes out with that guy, knocks him out, gives him the metal, injects it in his butt.
Which, like, there's metal in our bodies. There's metal. And also, if there was enough for him to pull, that would set off the metal detector, right?
Well, whatever. It does. The detector's like it because it's such trace amounts and it's distributed throughout his body. It's like
it doesn't show up on like the X-ray.
It does. It registers as like a glitch. It's like detected, and there's like such a blip that they're like, whatever, it's fine. I like how people remember that sequence where they're like, oh, Magneto pulls the iron out of his blood. I'm like, no, he just says that as like a joke.
Yes.
No, he pulls the metal that Mystique injects into him
out of his blood. Now that you've given me, I must have been writing notes when he walks by the metal detector. I will, nitpicking aside about how it works, the sequence is fucking cool.
It doesn't matter. What matters is getting to that sequence.
Yeah.
Because that's the most Magneto I've ever seen. And there are movies in which he is literally called Magneto, wears the helmet, and dresses in purple.
Yeah.
And this is the most Magneto he's ever seen. Well, this one and that great Inglourious Bastards came out a couple of years ago. Let's do that scene again.
Yeah. But with Magneto as the
Magneto instead.
Yeah. It's a great sequence. It does make me. There's hints of it later. I'm bummed that we never got full Fatal Attraction.
Yeah.
Like, especially with how central Wolverine is to these movies, man. That would have been such a great. Jumping ahead, everybody. If Magneto ripped the adamantium from Wolverine in X3, that's a great way to jump into. This is our starting point for the Wolverine movies, where he has to figure that shit out. Like, my life. Anyway,
I'd be very okay with that.
A lot of highs and lows, and we don't. There was when we were going through the Spider-Man movies, we had more of a buffer before we got to the rough shit that we do for X-Men movies.
Yeah.
So, that's how Magneto escapes he makes metal balls and just fucks the place up. It's a great sequence. Back with Storm and Nightcrawler and Jean, we find out that Nightcrawler says his tattoos are angelic symbols. Which
Yeah. What?
what are you hanging out with? What are you implying?
Yeah, it's a
Are there books with angelic symbols in them that I don't know about?
sure.
Sure. Um, Storm and Nightcrawler talk about anger and faith. This doesn't really matter. It's one of those blockbusters, especially superhero movies now, love to do this shit where like characters will say something and then they'll reference it later as if it means anything, and it does. Nobody's changed. There's no arc. It's just, hey, remember that thing we mentioned earlier? Here it is again.
Yes. That's like setting something up and then paying it off later. It's like Chekhov's gun, but dialogue based.
Yeah, but also the gun doesn't go off. We just point it again. Hey, remember that gun we showed you earlier? It's still over there.
Still got it.
Great, thanks.
Great.
They show up to save Wolverine and the gang from the cop situation. So they're flying away in the Blackbird. Jets show, like, things have fucking escalated. Jets show up. Hilariously, Wolverine like Mad Dog's Pyro for cooking the cops, even though Wolverine murdered an incredible amount of soldiers in an earlier scene.
Right. Well, he's like, oh, listen, you can argue those, number one, they're soldiers. Number two, they broke into a school with assault weapons. Safety's off. And number three, you were an aggressor.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I think the Wolverine's ground to be mad at Pyro is a little bit shaky. Is all
you think he'd be like, I mean, good for you, kid. You know, the sooner you learn to kill your enemies, the sooner you learn they'll never come back.
Exactly. There's a whole sequence. Spoiler: Monsters Ball came out between X1 and X2, so we're doing double time to try and give Halle Berry more to do in this movie.
Yes,
she uses her abilities to take out the jets. They fire off missiles. One of the missiles hits the Blackbird. Nightcrawler, classic Nightcrawler jumping out of the jet to save somebody. I think we got basically the same thing in when we covered
Friday the X-Men.
Friday the X-Men.
Yeah.
Although I did mention in my notes, lucky he didn't touch her skin. That would have fucked shit up pretty bad.
Yeah.
I don't know how he accomplished that, but sure. Mm-hmm. And then as the jet's crashing, Magneto saves them. And I put in my notes, the scope of these characters' abilities seems very situational. Like,
it is entirely. Yeah.
Because like Wolverine gets a moment later where he's like, Jean used her powers to try and stop the missiles, and he's like, good job. And it's like, it's still hit. How powerful is she supposed to be? Because I felt like missiles should be like a no-brainer.
Yeah, well, I remember her saying, like, you know, I'm not as powerful, I can't do as much, like almost implying that there was like a deleted sequence where she's like a little down on herself, or kind of you know, it's lost. It's like, look, I'm sorry, I don't care about Jean, so we're not going to do anything with her.
And I think this will get to one of my, and we'll get into this analysis. This is one of the bigger notes of this movie is none of these characters really grow in substantial way. You know what I mean? Like, it's still like it was a little forgivable in the first one. It's the first movie. Hey, here's everything. But like, we don't give, like, Halle Berry gets more to do, but also not really. Like, as a character, she doesn't grow or change.
Like, one of the things that, like, it's impossible not to know about Storm.
Yeah.
If you've loved the cartoons, the comic books, is that she's claustrophobic.
Yes.
It's just a classic thing. And it's so easy to demonstrate and to depict visually. It's a great moment to show her and to prove overcoming, adversity. And it is glaringly absent from every single X-Men movie that exists from the time it started to now.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, it's impossible not to know that. They don't care to do it. It's not on the agenda. The agenda is show everybody using powers at some point or another. Yeah. Everybody gets to use their powers in a really spectacular way one time, at least. And that's it.
And and it's tough too, because I think this is something, we'll get into this later too. This is something that, like, I think they really unlocked. Obviously, Avengers had the benefit of everybody had a movie first, but even with that, not because you're not going to do that with the next movie. This is a rule. It has worked since the dawn of time. And by the dawn of time, I mean, like, 80s cartoons, G.I. Joe, Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers. You give each character a very distinct, this is their thing. And we can add nuance to that, but this is their thing. And they did that with Avengers. This is Cap's thing. This is Iron Man's thing. And it's not just a power thing. It's like a personality thing.
Exactly.
And 2 movies in, the X movies have kind of failed to do that.
Big time.
And it's a bummer, because I know we talked about in the previous X movie that, listen, I love Halle Berry. Obviously, I haven't seen Monsters Ball. She was talented enough to get an Oscar for that movie. I do think she's really talented. Also, not for nothing, very easy on the eyes. But at one point, I either prior to the Bryan Singer version or maybe early in the Bryan Singer version, there was talks of Angela Bassett being Storm, and it's like, that is the correct
Storm.
answer. That's Storm.
That's Storm. This is Halle Berry as Storm.
You want somebody that like people would believably worship as a goddess. It's like Angela Bassett. Yeah, man. Like, yeah,
we basically do in
yeah. So like, again, nothing against Halle Berry. It's just, but that and it's just it's a quick, like, I don't need to tell you a lot about this character to know who this character is.
Right.
Anyway, they're saved by Magneto. He catches the X-Jet. We get basically Magneto reveals the story. Professor X plus Rebo equals WMD. That's basically the long and short of it.
Big time. Yeah.
It's like, man, some safety protocol. Is there something?
And then Logan will be like, we'll deal with that then. Logan, we'll deal with that. We will address that issue.
Jean probes Nightcrawler for the location of Stryker's base. There's a scene where Jean is fixing the X-Jet.
Yeah.
Which is she a mechanic? I mean, she could be. It's just not something we've established. Cyclops isn't here. And normally it'd be because we've established Cyclops works on.
He is a gearhead.
Yeah.
Man. I also want to point out there's a moment that I noticed in the sequence when they decide to probe Nightcrawler's mind. It's when he's hanging above them.
Yes.
There are a couple of shots like this, and it reminded me that like this is not a movie without its flaws, where it's like they want it to be a very visually distinct and interesting movie, but they also want it to be a very straightforward, action-oriented, like contemporary movie.
Yeah.
There are random shots peppered throughout that I think give off the illusion of creativity, but in fact are just not very good shots.
Mm-hmm.
One of them is that one. There's a shot where like we see it's not quite a POV shot, but it's like it's Nightcrawler hanging, and then we see everyone that he's snooping on below him.
Yeah,
but he looks like he is vertical instead of like it's just a weird, awkward shot. And I one of the things I couldn't help but notice is that like the movie has 100 of them, where there's just like it's a pretty straightforward movie, and then there's this shot in here where they think it's really good, or they're just not good enough to pull it off.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it's like there's a great, when Nightcrawler drops the knife and it says Mutant Freedom, and they do that angle where it like moves.
Yeah.
I'm like, I see what you're doing, and I think it sold when it came out, but now you can do that shot better. And
yeah, dude,
I think there's a better idea of how to execute that.
The early aughts are the fucking Wild West for this shit, man.
Exactly.
Like last night I watched Pitch Black for the first time.
Pitch Black.
And premise wise, and a lot of elements of it, like this movie's fucking rules. There's so many awkward directing and editing choices.
Yes.
That it's like, what were we fucking doing in the early aughts, man? Like,
no, that movie is like, that like there's a rough cut of that movie, Pitch Black, from I believe David Toohey.
Yeah.
And David Toohey made another movie that I'm like, what? And I think it's The Fugitive.
He wrote The Fugitive. Yeah, he wrote The Fugitive, yeah.
Which is one of the best scripts ever.
Yeah.
By the way. Just so tight, pays off. It is such a good script.
Yeah.
Anyway, and it's by David I created Riddick too.
Yeah, which I didn't know he did all three of them. I thought at one point it was just Vin Diesel powering that machine. It's
it's David Toohey and Vin Diesel. Like it's just this weird, like I don't know. Is he married? Are they married or something? Is it's like Paul W.S. Anderson and Mila Jovovich.
Yeah.
But no, Pitch Black is like at some point or another. I guarantee you there was like a rough cut of that movie that looks like a really solid effing movie, and then they went. Oh, can you make it look more like a video game commercial or a music video?
Oh man, 90s video game commercial. That is exactly what some of that is.
Right?
I was thinking like music video stuff, and I think what it might be with this too is with the onset of digital technology, you can fuck with more things, and so they did. And it's like, but there's less is more, man. A little bit goes a long way.
100%.
And I think that's why. Saying some of the directing decisions you're talking about effects wise, movies like this, and obviously something like Jurassic Park or T2 or The Gold Standard have aged well, because they're in that sweet spot where this stuff is good enough that we could do things that we've never done before, but not so good that we can't just throw out practical effects. And we need to spend a lot of time actually thinking about how we're going to execute it.
Right. We need to we get as much in camera as we can, and we use the tool that is necessary to gloss over. Like, oh man, how are we going to hide the seams on this robot? It's going to be
Yeah.
tough, but like we can use this, and like we can airbrush out like in editing. And then they went, we can do that with a computer, and it'll cost us less money, it'll be less time.
Yeah.
Then we can do it for longer,
Yeah.
and I know how to do it better, and we could shoot it. And we can actually shoot it like a sequence. Yeah. No, it gives the creativity just license to soar.
Yeah. So, but
2000s,
yeah,
it's tough.
yeah, and then and we're like, we could do this we can edit it this way because we get. Calm down, just cool it. Just
right,
cool it.
just leave it, cool it on the morphing effect.
Yeah. So Wolverine sneaks a smooch from Jean, which leads to a scene later where Mystique, it feels like as Jean, it turns out it's Mystique sneaks into Wolverine's tent as Jean, which by the way, this is technically assault. Just we don't need to dive into it.
Wolverine can push her off him at any time.
And so she goes through a bunch of different options, and if I were Logan, I'd be like, well, let's figure this out. Let's see.
Also, like, oh, and Mystique is also into like pain.
Yeah,
it's like no one left a scar like you, and I'm like, is this what we're doing?
Yeah, I'm like,
all right.
In the comics, listen, Mystique's a problem in the comics, but like, I'm saying is, I would get into trouble with Mystique. I would get myself in a situation where like I'm in over my head.
Absolutely, no, it's true. I love when she turns into William Stryker. She's like, what do you really want? And I'm like, not that.
Yeah, no. Let's go back to can we do the base Rebecca Romaine? Can we try? I wasn't there for that scene, but can we try that? Listen, we could do the stuff. You could just be you, the blue. It's a little different. I'm willing to experiment.
Totally.
So this is a cool sequence. We have a conversation breaking into the base, and it's like Wolverine's like, send me because he won't kill me, and Magneto's like, nah, man, do you know how to turn off? Do you know how to do the thing you need to do when you get in there? Let's do something different. And they send Mystique, and as you mentioned, everybody gets a moment. They're like their cool power moment.
Yes.
And even though we don't do a lot with Mystique as a character, they get a lot of mileage out of her abilities. This sequence fucking rules.
It does. It completely rules. The button on the scene is her flipping the bird while sliding under the door.
Yes.
It's her Indiana Jones hat moment. And I'm like, yes. Also, really quick, worth pointing out when Magneto goes, what are you going to do? Scratch it with your claws.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what he does.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, dude, if I had those claws, man, I would be using them for everything.
Oh, but it works. Like that's how he turns off the thing. He's like, I don't know.
That's right. That is how he saves the day.
No, like Magneto makes fun of him because he's such a blunt instrument, and he's like, I mean, here goes nothing, and it works. And he's like, well, that's that. And I'm like, again, just tight writing.
Also, it gives a few moments. They're very, very brief where it's Brian Cox playing Mystique, playing Stryker.
And he knows he's doing it. Like it's not like he's doing a scene. He's like, why did I say that? And it's like, oh, don't worry about it. Yeah. No, like you're playing a beautiful, sexy spy.
Yes.
Who is pretending to be you.
Yep. Love it. Love it. So finally, Scott has been absent from the film.
The whole damn movie.
Whole movie finally shows back up under control from Stryker. He fights Jean and he gets better somehow. I don't.
Oh yeah, no, she hits him. It's like the scene in Avengers when she's like, I did a cognitive dissonance. I did a cognitive recalibration. On you. I hit you really hard in the head.
Yes, classic. Always works.
Yep.
Wolverine explores the lab and finds a tub of molten adamantium just bubbling. I do like Stryker's explanation for this. It's like, dude, you don't get it, man. If you get adamantium to its liquid state, you don't let it harden again.
Right. Yeah.
And we get our big fight with Lady Deathstrike and Wolverine, and it's a cool fight. I will say Lady Deathstrike suffers from what I'm going to label Sabretooth syndrome, where it's like, in the comics though, man, in the comics,
cool. Way cooler, way more interesting, way more fun. Hell, in the cartoon show, she's better.
Yeah.
And by the way, she's like the actress is great. That's Kelly Hu.
I believe so. Yeah.
She's great and beautiful and fantastic. And like, I don't, it's not her nails. It's between her fingertips, which is creepy and scary. And and like Sabretooth, she is a person from his past, but either he doesn't remember or they don't remember because they're making the movie and they don't give a crap.
Yeah.
But again, he's like, I don't care. Like, Sabretooth, you should be like, oh, and at least they implied it by Sabretooth taking his dog tags.
Yeah.
Thrown away.
Yeah.
This just no.
She's just Lady Wolverine. We imply that, which in the comics she's a cyborg, correct? That's
in the comics she's a cyborg.
Yeah.
She has in enhancements and stuff. I believe there's adamantium involved as well, but yeah.
Always listen. It's either adamantium or what's Omega Red?
Vibranium.
Vibranium. Omega Red has a different thing.
Oh, carbonadium, I believe.
Yeah, whatever. It won another one of those fake, like whatever.
Yeah.
Can't wait till we get Omega fucking Red in one of these movies.
Can you imagine? And we can get away with it now because, Russia. But man, Omega Red, wouldn't that be cool?
That'd be wild, dude. I wonder if we'll ever do Cyber. Like, if we'll ever get to Anyway,
I don't think we're getting Cyber. I don't think we're getting Maverick. I don't think we're gonna get.
I fucking love Maverick's design. I couldn't tell you one thing about the character, but every time I see him, I'm like, he looks cool. He looks fucking cool.
I know one person who wants Cyber. That's amazing that you mentioned Cyber. So my friend is like, man, I love Cyber. When are they gonna get Cyber in there? And I'm like, never.
Yeah, I felt like I don't entirely know where I got this impression, but I always got the impression that Cyber's one of the worst. Like he's one of the toughest. But we haven't even done Sabretooth right yet, so let's prioritize that one.
Let's not skip over to Cyber.
Exactly.
Sabretooth accurate. Yeah.
But so basically, this is just somebody for Wolverine to fight, similar power set. And it's a well executed action sequence. And this is where we talk about they fight, and for the most part, Lady Deathstrike has Wolverine's number.
Yeah.
But he's able to inject her with the adamantium that then hardens in her body, and then with the added revelation that she is not willingly doing this, it's kind of fucking tragic.
It is. No, it like killing her snapped her out of it, and she's just as far as she's concerned, she's like, "What are you doing to me?" And but great moment, crowd reaction when her head hits the floor under the water and tink, like as though she's not walking away from this.
Yes, no, that's bye Lady Deathstrike.
Sucks.
Like her nails, by the way, I saw. This is another tangent. For some reason, maybe because of Fall X or something, I saw an image on Twitter, something of Daken and his stupid claws, and I think they're fucking stupid. And
he's terrible in general. He's just this crappy character. Get out of here.
I love that, in X-Men Evolution, they're like, okay, we got a clone of Wolverine that's female, and they're like, but females of the species sometimes have different attributes. So maybe she has the two claws in her hands, and then the one in the foot.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And then the comics were like, but what if his son had a claw in his fucking what are you doing? It's not just different claws to be different claws. Anyway, whatever.
Yeah.
Deathstrike's finger claws are similar to what she has in the comics. It looks cool. It's effective. Yes. It's different enough from Wolverine. Anyway, we need to stop. Jason Stryker is using Jason to mind control Professor X into focusing on the mutants, therefore killing them. Yep. So Storm, this is another classic Nightcrawler thing. I can only teleport places I've seen, even though, by the way, in the opening sequence, we saw him in one hall and then he teleported in another hall where he couldn't possibly.
There was a conversation. He's like, the scene is going to be awesome. Please stop arguing with me.
Yes, exactly. I do not care, but Nightcrawler does the thing. It has to be line of sight, and I can't see into Dark Cerebro. What am I going to do? You're going to teleport in there, man. Come on.
I have faith in you. Also, there's a whole thing about Storm may be an atheist, and or at least she doesn't believe in anything, and Nightcrawler helps her find her faith. Fart. Okay, that's her.
Yeah,
that's the impression of an arc.
Mm-hmm. Storm is jaded ? But now she believes in
something.
Which, listen, man, they're cute together. Nightcrawler's fucking cute in this movie. I love Nightcrawler. I'm not going to question it too much. Nightcrawler's fucking great. Alan Cummings fucking great. There's a video. I saw a video on Instagram, and I think it's them now because I'd forgotten that they were together in this. It's a video of Brian Cox and Alan Cumming. And and they're in a car, and Alan Cummings just sharing the story about a job he had when he was a teenager, and it's fucking adorable. The two of them together, it's this is fucking adorable, and it makes me happy. Cool. Anyway, they teleport in. Storm free the way she you can't just knock Jason out; it'll kill the professor. So she makes it very cold in Dark Cerebro, so that Jason pulls out normally.
Yep.
I do have the question of how many humans died
Oh yeah.
How many like 80-year-olds with a pacemaker died while this was going on?
Yeah, he's killing people. People are literally like, as that's happening. So yeah,
Yep.
people definitely died. He killed like 10,000 people.
The base starts to collapse for reasons that I am not entirely clear on.
Water, right? Like the water.
It's built in a dam, and the water starts coming out.
Yeah. There's like pressure. There's too much pressure, and it's gonna blow up. And so the water's coming, and so everything's falling apart now.
Oh, dude. I jumped way fucking ahead. Sorry, everybody. In my notes, I was like, wait, I'm missing stuff. Before any of this happens, I apologize.
Yeah.
Magneto stops Jason, and another cool sequence with all the guards, and Magneto just pulls out all the pins in their grenades.
Yeah.
He makes Jason start targeting humans instead of mutants.
So great. I love Magneto being like, solid plan. I'm gonna take it. Don't forget, I'm a bad guy. I've always been a bad guy. I'm like, yes.
This is
yes.
And we will revisit this repeatedly. And it's like Magneto's on the team until he gets an opportunity to flip the script, and then he does that instead.
Yep. Yeah. He's also like, I'm not beyond using my old friend.
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah. I like that. I think that's a good way. Like, Magneto is a villain. He's just a relatable villain, but he's not a good guy. Like,
no.
So while this is going on, Wolverine stops Stryker as he gets in a helicopter. Stryker, they have a conversation where like Stryker's like, if you knew what we did together, which implies a way more interesting backstory than what we get in Origins.
Oh, big time. Like all the work we did together. What work? What did you work on? Nothing.
This is what we were talking about with Sabretooth. It's like, yeah, this is all you need. And I'm bummed. Again, this is just one of those things that even in the comics, we rarely commit to. Like, Wolverine's done some bad stuff in the past. Yeah. And we go to the past, and you're like, I don't know, man. It seems like normal action movie hero shit. I don't know. I like the on paper. I like the idea that he's got some stuff to redeem himself, but you need to commit to that and have one of your more popular characters. Have done some messed up shit in the past.
Yeah.
Wolverine leaves Stryker to go save his friends. Magneto shows up later, and we find out that he wraps up Stryker in a bunch of chains. And
I love that. Yeah, he's like, "Oh, hi."
Yeah, yes. And now this is where we get the Storm Nightcrawler stuff. So now this is when Jason's targeting humans. The base starts blowing up. Stuff starts falling. Nightcrawler's pointedly saves Storm, and he saves Professor X, and then leaves Jason to be crushed by debris.
Sure is. You know what? Fine. These movies, especially superhero movies up until the MCU are like, just kill the bad guy. I mean, the MCU is also like, just kill the bad guy.
Just kill the bad guy. Yeah.
But just let him die. Like, we have to save everybody, but like, just die.
Yeah, we're not bringing Jason back.
So much easier.
Come on,
so much easier.
As long as Magneto and the Brotherhood walk away from this, we'll have villains for days.
We will always have villains. Yep, we're fine. We don't need Jason in this. We don't need to repeat this story. We're good.
So Wolverine leads everybody out. As you mentioned, he does what Magneto said he was going to do. He scratches the gate, and it opens or closes or whatever. They arrive at the chopper. It's gone. Meanwhile, while this has all been going on, Pyro, Iceman, and Rogue have been left at the jet. Pyro leaves and hooks up with Magneto. Rogue arrives with the jet. Wolverine finds Stryker real quick and wraps things up with him. I forgot to mention that in the museum there was a kid with a little reptile tongue. He sticks his tongue out at a little girl. Wolverine's carrying that kid, and that kid sticks his tongue out at Stryker. Ooh, burn! Gotcha. The dam breaks. But the jet, we're not able to get the jet off the ground. Jean goes out and sacrifices herself to save everybody else. And they even there's a scene where like she projects her mind into Professor X. And Scott's like, all the questions. Why can't you be in here with us? Why can't you do this from the jet? And she's like, no, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Sure. No, you don't. Well, also, because they clearly didn't plan X3. Like, there was no plan. They had no ideas what to do. The only thing they did know is they wanted to do the Phoenix.
Yes.
And so they're doing it. They're trying to follow it. And so I think that she is talking to the Phoenix, like that the Phoenix is an entity. Yeah. That's like, you have to leave. You have to disappear. You have to kill yourself. Like, not kill yourself, but like you have to hide. To go away. The only way you can do it is by leaving.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, that's better than what we got. I love the idea of like there being a space bird that's like, come on, like, because then she turns into bird. She gets fiery, like, but no. Instead, it's always been her. X3 is such garbage. But
It's it's funny. X3 is garbage. It's tune in next week or next month, kids. But I think it's a similar thing, and maybe I should save this for next week with Venom. That it makes sense that you want to go through that well as soon as possible because it is one of the most iconic stories,
right?
But also the legwork you have to do to get there, and especially in this day and age, like now, you'd be like, "We'll save it for movie 6." Back in, it's like, wait, we got the movie 2? What?
We're lucky we have a third one planned. Like, no.
Well, the first one made enough money that they're already talking about a third one.
Exactly. Yeah. This movie, you didn't even solve the Earthbound problems. You're going to go into space?
Yeah.
Like, you couldn't even go into space after until the Dark Phoenix movie. Like the full on, this killed the franchise movie.
Yep. But anyway, that's what we're setting up. Her eyes turn fiery a couple times in the movie. She turns all fiery here. We're going for Phoenix. Bryan Singer actually had to be talked out of doing the Dark Phoenix story in this movie. I
guess that's good.
Yeah. So she quote unquote dies. The president is about ready to make an address about the nation. Basically, we're going to war with mutants functionally is what he's going to say. Professor X pauses everything. There's a thunderclap. The power goes out. Everybody's frozen. Professor X has literally frozen time in front of the president. Is like, hey man, don't worry, we're not a threat. It's like,
oh no, I did not get that impression. I got the impression of like, don't do this, man.
Yeah.
You'll lose.
Says like, this isn't a threat, and it's like, it really feels like a threat, man.
Yeah, that's because it is. That's why Wolverine's last line in that whole speech is, "We'll be watching you."
Yes,
is like because it's just. Yeah, no, man. Don't do this. Hey, wouldn't it be easier if we just didn't?
Yeah, exactly. Hey, listen, man. Wouldn't it be great if we didn't do what you're gonna do?
Do you want to go outside? Like, it's just a really just it's just an insincere offer for peace. Like,
yes.
Hey, man. How about we just get your toughest guy versus our toughest guy?
Let's just see how it goes. Let's just see how it goes. So the final scene is with Professor X, Cyclops, and Wolverine. Once again, Logan's hair is like insane. And Professor X is like, she made her choice. And as Scott and Logan are leaving, Logan's like, and it's wild that Logan thought this would be helpful information to have.
I know.
It's like, she did make her choice. It was you. Oh, I'm so sorry, Logan. Was there an I didn't think
there was an option here?
I thought she'd previously chosen me. What are you implying happened while I was being mind controlled by the evil scientist?
And didn't I remember having an argument with somebody. I think she says, I married a good guy. Like, it's not that they're dating. They are married.
She confirms that they're married. I don't think she confirms but she does say, like, I chose the good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think
which is just
married.
Yeah, but yeah, I thought she said married, but in any case, like, this is not a fling.
Yeah, man. They were together prior to you showing up for like a week, man. Like, you haven't even hung out with Jean all that much.
That's right. And there hasn't really been any real interaction between the two of you ever.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
but you're flirty. Listen, you're both hot. I fucking get it, man. But like, that's not how you don't blow up a long term, even though the only thing we know about Scott is that he is a dick.
Yeah. But like, sorry.
But he's also
it's not helpful.
And I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Totally. He's great. He's delightful.
I've learned to love James Marsden after these movies. And other projects that he's done.
It didn't help is that he needed to leave X3 to make Superman Returns, where he can be a cuck.
Yeah. Brian
I don't like using that word, but like, Superman just comes in and goes like, "Hey, that's your girl, and I'm gonna take her."
Yeah, and we'll get into that X3. How Bryan Singer sunk 2 franchises by leaving this one and going.
Boom! Just make a good X-Men 3. No, I'll make 2 bad movies.
So students show up in Professor X's class, and he like pauses and like looks out the window, and a student's like, "Is everything okay, Professor?" And he does a little wry smile, and he's like, "I think it will be," implying that like Jean's alive, right? But also having seen X3 and knowing what happened specifically to Scott and Professor X, it's like, no, Professor, things are not fine, actually.
Yeah, and actually, we're gonna like retcon that you know all of this and did something to her. Like, give me a break.
Oh, that's right. Ugh. Yeah, those X3s when we start leaning. What if Professor X is a bad guy? Actually, it's like I don't think that's a good instinct, man. I know that we're leaning hard in that in the current X-Men runs.
Yeah,
but it's like, I don't.
it's just you know what it is. It's so frustrating because it's like, you know, I get that. All you're saying by going whenever people go like Superman, Professor X, like it's unrealistic that they're so good. What you're saying is no, it's unrealistic for you to be that good.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're saying it's unbelievable to you that anyone could have a moral barometer. And that's more telling for you than it is practical for this character.
And I also lean into what Grant Morrison talks about, because I do think, there's a part of me, especially when we see the scope of Professor X's power, it's like absolutely corrupts absolutely. In the real world, somebody with that ability would be an unpleasant person. Because why wouldn't they be? There's no reason for them not to be.
Right.
But as Grant Morrison pointed out, it's a fantasy, dude. Like it's not real.
Okay.
Yeah, this is our idea. This is like it's like watching Star Trek. It's like, wouldn't it be great if we lived in a more utopian society? Let's imagine that so that maybe we can achieve it. Anyway, and then we end with Professor X turns to the student. He casually asks, have any of you read T.H. White's Once and Future King? As if they're going to do that for fun. Like, not like it's an assignment. It's like, hey, just in casual reading, have you ever read T.H. White's Once and Future King? No, dude. Right. Did you assign it? Then no, we didn't read it.
Yeah. And it's like, why? Well, because because I talked about it with Magneto a while ago.
Yeah. With the terrorist. And then we end with a shot of Jean voiceover and a shot of what appears to be a fiery bird reflected in the water of the lake.
Yeah.
The end. And that leads us to our next section, which is New Mutants. And this is where we focus on new characters introduced and whether we think and how we think the movie handled them.
Yeah.
So, of course, Nightcrawler. Alan Cumming, Nightcrawler. He's the big marquee guy. How do we feel about Alan Cumming's Nightcrawler?
I like it. I liked it in this. I don't care for the like every character that we introduce has to either have like a textured suit or a textured body.
Yes.
But I don't care for the angelic circles that are all over his body, but otherwise it's fine.
Yeah. It's an interesting instinct. I like the performance. I think Alan Cumming's great. And again, it's just one of those things which I guess is actually praiseworthy. It's just like more time. I just want more time with Nightcrawler. It's always tricky when you're like, we're introducing these characters' relationships just now. And it's like, we can't.
And apparently,
what were you going to say?
He quit. Like there's multiple stories about this. The first of which was he wasn't invited back. Another one was that he was too busy. And a final one, which is the most recent one, was he never wanted to work with Bryan Singer ever again.
Ooh, we'll get to that. Why that might be the case in a minute. Also, I can't blame like sitting in that makeup chair, man. It looks cool, but like, dude, I can't imagine that being a fun. I just love Nightcrawler so much, and he's so good as the character. We also get Lady Deathstrike, which we talked a little bit about this, which like looks cool, but it's like
looks cool, total waste.
Yeah, and not really the character. And then Pyro.
Whatever. He's the guy who plays him is uninspiring. He's just kind of like there. He is. What's frustrating is like they're not. What's great and frustrating about these movies is that like they're making a movie and they're not building a franchise.
Yes.
It's not. They're not giving you the best Pyro in this movie.
Yeah.
They are making the opposite of Iceman. Like they're making
100%
evil Iceman, and evil Iceman. In that regard, he does a good job of mirroring, paralleling, and opposing Bobby.
Yeah,
that's what he does. Okay. Is he a great Pyro? Not even a little bit, but like he is a good young. He's a great young teenager in 2003 who would have fire powers. Like totally. I believe him.
And I think it comes from. I was trying to look it up just now, and I should have put it in my notes. There was like a movie that came out when they were preparing for this movie that really influenced them, and it's one of those like, and I think just in a broader sense, this is reflective of a lot of like the early 2000s stuff where like this it's not, truth be told, how the sausage is made. It's something
Yeah.
I've been struggling with on the thumbs because everything in the X movies is so like metal gray and blue.
Yeah.
And it's like it was so much easier to make the Spider-Man thumbs because it's like you've got the costume that pops, you've got these like, and everything's like the comic book colors.
It's
And
bright.
this instinct to make everything, I understand it, but it's like the disappointment is Pyro's fucking fun.
Yep.
And I love villains that are having everybody look forward to Jason Momoa and Fast X. I love villains that have a blast being a villain.
Yes.
And that would be such an interesting aspect to have in these movies, but everything's too muted for that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a bummer. Last one is Stryker, Brian Cox's Stryker, and I think we can both agree, like, other than now we know, like, man, you could have milked that. You could have done more with that.
Could have done more. I do miss him being an evangelist, but I'm glad that they didn't crowd him by adding that to it as well. Like, you could have said he used to be a preacher and then got into the military, but again, like, I like the idea that he's just a general and and a country boy. Like, that's all good.
Yeah,
it's all good. No notes for him.
And I actually think the instinct of saying, like, I think surprisingly, God Loves, Man Kills, and Return to Weapon X actually blend pretty, like saying like Stryker's Weapon X guy now. It's like, fine, that's great.
Sure.
That works.
Yeah, I don't need a whole thing because they're also like, we want to make a Wolverine movie, but like, can we and are we going to? And then the first chance they get, they screwed it up. So it's like, let's not introduce like a whole new, although it would have, diminishing returns. The best William Stryker is here.
Yes.
And then every time he shows up in 3 other movies, I think, and he's so awful in all of them. And it's just like,
Days of Future Past, that you couldn't get around. I am a little like, you guys couldn't have just invited Brian Cox back for Origins,
for Wolverine Origins, and no one would complain. How is he? Because they're those 2 actors are like, what, 10 years apart? It's like, you got some city miles, buddy. Like, what happened to you?
Exactly. It's like Ewan McGregor to fucking
Alec Guinness. Yeah, like 10 years. Oh my god.
Yeah. So now we get into X Factor. This is just kind of the behind the scenes shit and a little bit of analysis, although we got a healthy dose of analysis when we were getting into the movie itself.
True.
So Brian, singer and producer Tom DeSanto envisioned X2 as the series equivalent of Empire Strikes Back, which once you say that, it's like, well, yeah, obviously.
Sure.
The characters are quote, all split apart and then dissected, and revelations occur that are significant. The romance comes to fruition and a lot of things happen. And some notes there. I do think maybe one of my issues in hindsight with this movie is splitting the characters apart makes it kind of not feel like an X-Men movie. Like, we still have, like, I just want to see the X-Men together being X-Men.
There's no scene where they're all in one sequence doing something big and cool. Like, again, I know I'm thinking about Guardians because it's just so fresh in my mind, but like, the Guardians are split up in that movie in a big way. And then we get one big scene of all of them together for one last ride. And it's like this really great sequence that's also a oneer. And it's like, that's really cool. It would never have occurred to them to do it. And that the conversation was, you can't put every single X-Man in one scene together for one fight because it would be too expensive to shoot.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, that's a shame. Also, I didn't really feel Empire Strikes Back with this one because I didn't feel the ticking clock / desperation element to it. I felt it in the like Rogue and Bobby and Logan sequences, but in no one else's sequence did I feel like concerned for anybody or worried. Also, there is no like cliffhanger except for Jean, which is so unconnected to the themes and ideas that are presented in the last 2 movies. You already set yourself up. They set themselves up for failure. I don't feel it.
David Hayter and Zach Penn wrote separate scripts and then combined the best elements from both screenplays.
Shocking.
Angel and Beast appeared in early drafts of the script, and Angel was originally going to be turned into Archangel by Stryker, which would have been fucking cool.
I like that a lot.
That would have been, because when you say like, okay, nowadays we'd have them all team up at the end. It's like, I wonder, who would you have them fight? It's not going to be Jason, and it's not going to be Lady Deathstrike.
No, it can't. Who Sentinels or something, right?
Dude, having Sentinels under Alkali, dude.
Like the whole damn thing just explodes as one big effing
Sentinel. God, especially early 2000s.
Yeah,
being able to afford it, but fuck, that would have been so cool,
right?
And then the 90s kids, like all the X-Men teaming up with Magneto to fight a Sentinel. My brain would have melted.
Yes. Yes, Magneto's trying to like he's just like, I've got this, and he can't move it because it's like, oh, it's made of mostly like plastics
or unbendable metal, unmagnetic metals, whatever.
Yeah,
Sure,
whatever, it's fine.
Tyler Mane was going to return a Sabretooth, but obviously that didn't pan out.
Shame.
It is a shame. There were scenes shot that developed Professor X and Cyclops' story more, the brainwashing stuff, but they were cut.
They're probably really boring, yeah.
Probably. David Hayter was bummed because it's like Cyclops doesn't get anything to do in the movie, and it's like, yeah,
that's fair.
You're right.
That's fair. Oh, really quick note: I love Professor X's suit in this movie. It is so great.
It's a suit, man.
It's such a smooth suit. It's
so looks a sharp-dressed man.
It's perfect. It's like it's never been worn. It's immaculate. And I've never seen a suit like it again, but it felt very Professor X. I was like,
100%. There was a Danger Room set that was constructed, but it was cut from the movie.
Yeah.
The movie originally, I told this earlier, the movie originally received a rated R rating due to the X Mansion battle, so it was cut for a few seconds to secure the PG-13. So you saw Guardians Volume 3.
Yeah.
We don't have that problem anymore.
No, those are over.
Yeah, between that and Multiverse, Guardians 3 was another moment like Multiverse of Madness where scenes happen. I'm like, this would be. Time out, everybody. This would be R in like if this was not a Marvel movie, this would be an R-rated movie just for this sequence alone.
Yep. And they just went now, and that it's like the MPA is just like, oh, you're Marvel, yeah, you do whatever you want.
Yeah. Go to town.
We're all making money here. It's fine.
So this is where I get to the Bryan Singer story.
Yeah.
This is from Den of Geek. I'm quoting from Den of Geek. According to the report, the cast of 2003's X2 X-Men United had a consequential confrontation with Singer centered on his erratic, frequently absent, and narcotics-addled tenure over the sequel's Vancouver production. Which, by the way, if anybody remember the stories around Bohemian Rhapsody, apparently these were habits he started early and just kept throughout his career.
Never stopped. It's like, dude, that was 20 years ago you started doing that. You might want to slow down.
Yeah, man. The human body can only take so much.
Damn right. Unless you're Keith Richards.
Yeah. Which apparently resulted in the franchise's breakout star, Wolverine actor Hugh Jackman, being injured in a stunt that should not have been shot that day. So basically, long story short, not only Bryan Singer, but some other members of the crew showed up high. There was a stunt that was supposed to happen the next day. He decided to shoot it that day, and it went wrong, and it left apparently Hugh Jackman bleeding on set.
Oh my God.
And so all of the actors staged an intervention in costume in Bryan Singer's trailer.
That's
and it's
awesome.
Like, dude, man, if all the X-Men in costume show up
to stop you, you're the villain.
You're the villain, dude. And it bums me out. You hear these stories and it's like, so we should have stopped this guy sooner, right? Like, like not just the sex pest allegations, which are bad enough, man. But it's like, so when Alan Cummings like, yeah, man, I'm not working with that guy again. It's like, I support that decision. Good decision.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Well, only he walked away. Nobody else. It's weird.
Cam says, from the title naming convention to the color palette to the copycat character fight, the movie has T2 written all over it more than Empire.
That's fair.
That is fair. And also in the movie's defense, if you're going to rip off a movie, man, T2, there's worse movies. There's a reason why.
I mean, the movie's called X2 for God's sake. By the way, X-Men United, terrible title. I just liked X2.
X2. Well, apparently it's either or. Like if you look it up on Wikipedia, it's just X2. I like it because I want X-Men in the title somewhere. Like I just.
Well, that like, and it's like Captain America First Avenger, where they're like, overseas it's called First Avenger. It's not called Captain America.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, yeah. Because nobody
wants to go see it. Nobody in Singapore wants to go see a freaking movie called Captain America.
Captain America. And now that takes us to our next segment, which is New X-Men, which is how, if in any way, will the MCU incorporate any of this stuff, or should they? Is there something from this movie we'd like to see the MCU incorporate?
I want to see Phoenix in the cosmos of the Marvel universe. Marvel has done such a great job of acclimating and normalizing aliens and space and Marvel space, like to the point where we've seen Eternity and he looks just like the comic book. Like we've seen Watchers, we've seen Ego, the Living Planet. It is not a stretch to think that there's a spacefaring entity that is obsessed with a crystal held by a dethroned queen of the Shi'ar Empire. Like I think we're all on board for a Phoenix, especially if you incorporate it in a way that is like, you pepper it in, people are like, oh yeah, like what are we dealing with? The Galactus, the Phoenix, like just like they do in the comic books.
Yeah.
But Phoenix is something where it needs a host, and it's out there.
And I hope. My concern is like, listen, we burned Phoenix twice now. We're not going to revisit that well, but
100%. There's no way that I think they're too gun shy on Phoenix, but yeah.
But I think you're right. I think because again, you have the runway. I've talked a lot about how I want more time with these characters, and they're not going to get individual movies. And I don't know that they should. I actually don't know that most X characters could support their own feature. What you could do is a Disney Plus anthology where it's like, this is our Cyclops episode, this is our Storm episode, this is our da-da-da episode.
Totally.
And like, here's just an hour of each of these characters' backstories, and maybe a little bit of them interacting so that when we get to the movie, it's all there. But I think also and this will require an immense amount of forethought.
Yeah.
I feel like, but if you say, you go back to the phase structure, you're like, okay, the X movies are doing this. Meanwhile, we're going to see the Shi'ar and the Phoenix throughout our cosmic movies. Like, let's say we do an Infinity Watch or a Silver Surfer or whatever, a Nova. Yeah. We'll introduce the Shi'ar in our Nova movie, just like we introduced the Kree in our Guardians movie.
Yeah.
So that and honestly, truthfully, they might do a new Guardians franchise. I think there might be merit in like do the Infinity Watch. Like I know technically the stones aren't around, but they're also like the cosmic embodiments of parts of the universe. They probably
the universe didn't end. Those things are still there. Like the Soul Stone still exists, right? They didn't blow that up.
So like, and also just I wouldn't mind more Adam Warlock is all I'm saying. Just do a little bit more with that character. But whatever our cosmic team is, like seriously, I would build up to like their instinct would probably be, although this is not the worst idea either. I think you could still fit Phoenix into this. Avengers versus X-Men, right? Like end of phase, whatever. Yeah. We're doing Secret Wars, ends of phase, whatever. Avengers versus X-Men. Mm-hmm. But like with Phoenix, maybe Avengers team up with the Guardians of the Galaxy. Yeah. You could do, truthfully, you could do both. You could maybe fit like I'm thinking of what was the Guardians X-Men team up in the comics?
Oh, the Trial of Jean Grey,
that story or some shit.
Oh, the Black Vortex.
Whatever. Combine that with Phoenix Saga, with Avengers vs. X-Men, with Kree Skrull War. You could do it. There's something there.
Easily. Oh, you just know the X-Men get the Starjammers, the Avengers get the Guardians, and you just move on from. I mean, like the fact is, we saw in 2 different movies, we've seen the Ravagers, right? And a distinct crazy ass team that looks really cool that could definitely support their own franchise with a fun lead. The Starjammers is just a stone's throw away.
Yeah.
Just do it. And it's funny. I was thinking about like, you were saying you can't make a movie of all these characters, but like, okay, what if you're shooting an X-Men movie, right? And you're like, all right, you work it into your budget where you're like, we're going to shoot, because you hear about these scenes or you see them where you're like, this is a spectacular scene that was just cut. And it's like a 2.5 minute scene that's just really cool, but it's got scene. And it's like, I was just watching, what was it? David Fincher apparently likes to do 30 takes or 20 takes. Cause he's like, you spent $250,000 on this set. We're going to get in and get out as soon as possible. Why? Yeah. We gotta sit here and spend some time in this scene. We've paid $20,000 for a crew to be here. We spent $50,000 to get this thing built. And then we're going to shoot it for 10 minutes and go.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's fair. Same deal, same application, but you're shooting an X-Men movie. You're like, we're shooting this 2 to 10 minute long scene. It's just going to be about Cyclops, and it's going to be building his character and understanding him. And you're not really making it for the movie. You're making it as a supplemental short that comes out on Disney Plus that deepens Cyclops source, and each of them gets a scene that you shoot that's like deepening their character and explaining who they are, that introduces them to the audience, and so that you can have the movie, which is shorthand and you're having fun. But if you want to know more about them and you need to know more about them, go to Disney Plus and check out those longer sequences that we shot kind of for Disney Plus, but actually we worked it into the movie budget, so it looks a little better.
Oh, and I also think I do think there would be merit, and there's probably elements of this already that I think they could think of this like filming a TV series where it is like we've got these sets, and so basically like we're filming parts of the show and the movie concurrently. They inform each other.
Yes.
Just because I want more space to figure out who these characters are and for them to bounce. I mean, truthfully, and I've said this on our Spider-Man show, I kind of want these to be live action shows. I really want to live in that space with these characters to get into all the or at least do me. You know what they could do, man? And I kind of wish they do this with Spider-Man is there's a template for this fucking Star Wars, right? The Clone Wars show, Rebels. This is stuff that fills out their animated series that are canon that fill out stuff. Do that with X-Men.
Right.
Have your movies, but have an animated series that theoretically would cost you less because you don't need to pay for fucking.
You already have the What If team. Like, just use What If and just
use. It can be that.
I don't like it. But
you could do something else, but like, and it is canon stories with these characters.
Yes.
That again fleshes out their day-to-day lives and allows you an opportunity to have them fight villains that you're not going to fucking do in the movies, or that maybe you want to see them that you could do in the movies, but.
There's so much in the X-Men and especially in the animated series. The animated series is one of those like economic shows for no good reason. It's animation. You could do anything. And in fact, the Dark Phoenix sagas, I'm sure everyone's favorite saga of animation superhero cartoonery. Yeah. But there are so many episodes where they're in the Oval Office. Mm-hmm. They're in the mansion. They're on the street. They're in a pool hall. Yeah. And they're just and they're either in their cities or they're not. Yeah. And it's like, you could do a show where you're like, where it's live action, and it's like, it's because the thing people want to see is the previous on X-Men. Oh my God, will they? Won't they? I love you. I can't be with you. That kind of thing. Like, there's no reason that a Rogue and Gambit scene should cost you more than $1 million.
Yeah,
right. Like, so it's like, you could shoot a great scene between two charismatic actors in silly ass costumes in a set that is essentially in a mansion. Yeah. And it's like, and that's a
set we already have because we're shooting X-Men movies.
Exactly. Or you just go, oh, X-Men is going to be shot on the Mandalorian circle set. So, we have a crew who's going in the Unreal Engine and they're building out. This is what the Xavier Institute looks like. Here's every single room. It's all set up. It's all done. Yeah. And so we could shoot at any time an additional scene or a scene that's going to go out on the app, which may or may not close because I don't know if you just read the article, but like Chapek made up all the numbers and it's all fake, and they're not going to be turned, like Disney Plus won't turn a profit until 2026, and they're getting sued by their investors, and it's just like, it's a real disaster. Just like all these. It's great. I'm like, yes, because none of you deserve this. No one asked for this. Nobody wants these streaming services. I wanted Netflix, and that's it. All of you should have made deals with Netflix. What are you doing?
I disagree, Sal. I disagree. Competition. I appreciate competition. Also, I don't particularly like Netflix all that much. I don't watch almost anything on there.
Yeah. Now I'm just no. But if they at all, if everybody, if Paramount, Disney Plus, and if Paramount, Disney, and HBO / Warner Brothers had gotten together and said, we're content creators. We make the content. We make it for Netflix.
Yeah.
And everybody just makes it for Netflix. We'd be golden. We wouldn't have anything. We wouldn't have any of the Star Trek shows, which, oh no. Dude, we wouldn't have any of the Star Wars shows.
Season 3, Strange New World.
One season out of 3. Two terrible seasons of Picard.
We got there. No, I hear what you're saying. I like the apps. I do. I'm bummed to hear that they're combining Hulu into Disney Plus because Hulu has all the mess shows.
Yeah, it's not even combined. It's like it's gonna be packaged. Like,
and that's the thing. I think the bigger issue is these fucking business schools and tech bros deciding they know entertainment, and it's like,
right.
And so they make, and it's whatever. We don't need to get into all this.
No,
stuff.
It's true. But because we have the app and they're trying to push it, and it's $1 trillion in debt. Like, just make stuff that is supplemental content for your movies, which is the real big deal.
And I think you look at, like, I think because again, I think if I'm Feige, I'm considering, if they're not already doing something like this, I'm considering looking at a model like the comics where it's like, I'm in charge, I'm editor in chief, but each brand needs its own editor to keep track of all this stuff. So there's somebody that's me for X-Men, somebody I trust that's the me for X-Men, and they give me the broad strokes and I say, yep, and then we move on. But they're day to day, they're handling the X-Men shit.
Yeah. This is where we're going to end up. Okay. Got it.
Yeah. Got it. And then you say, I think, like, you look at a movie like this, taking it back to X2, you pick your core, what's worked. So the Guardians have worked. The Guardians are maybe 5-ish members, give or take. Right. Yeah. So we can solidly tell a story about a 5-ish people, and we don't need like individual movies for each of them. So we pick our core 5. And then in like a movie like this, the setup of Bobby, Pyro, Ice, that's a Disney Plus series. That's Generation X. That's New Mutants.
Yes.
That's where we get. Listen, we're not going to do a movie with Sauron in the Savage Land.
No.
but we could do it in the Disney Plus show, and then it's there if we ever want to use it. If
we already built it out, it looks we have it we have a file called Savage Land.
If we
pull it up
want, if Avengers versus X-Men, a big fight takes place in Savage Land, just like Infinity War has the Wakanda fight. It's set up in the Disney. We're good to go
completely.
And that'll give them more room to breathe. And I don't know who you choose for your core 5. Like I've said this before. I think you say like, listen, we're gonna make Wolverine movies. That's a no-brainer. So Wolverine should be in the X-Men movies, but he's a supporting character. He doesn't need to be the marquee guy because he's got his own thing.
Exactly.
And it probably
he has a cool moment in every movie, but hell, you set up your Wolverines where it's like all your Wolverine movies and specials are all set in the past.
Yeah.
Before he joins the X-Men.
Yeah.
This is where he's been the whole time.
I think this will be the last question in this, and then we'll close out. Going MCU, you're Kevin Feige's guy,
right?
You're rebooting movies. Are we saying Wolverine remembers his past, doesn't remember his past?
I think that like there's such a fun. Everybody loves the amnesiac Wolverine.
Yeah,
I think that it's easier and quicker, and it seems to me that the Feige approach would be yes, he remembers everything, just to keep it clean.
Yeah,
but I like the idea that he doesn't remember it, and I think that's like. It's almost cleaner because you don't have to. You can have a character show up and go, "I've been your long lost partner. I've been your long lost love. Don't you remember when you teamed up with Captain America?" There's all kinds of stuff you could do with that and play with it. I just don't. I think that everyone loves that he doesn't remember his past. No one cares if he gets it.
Yeah,
like nobody wants to see another X-Men 2. Where it's like, oh, Wolverine, you don't remember, do you? Nobody wants to hear that ever again. I think we could live our whole lives without ever hearing, oh, Wolverine, you don't remember, do you?
Yeah.
Ever again. I think we're good.
Yeah.
How about you? What do you think?
I think we're possibly because we're the same generation. It's like, I like Amnesiac Wolverine. I like that. And we can hint at it, but we never need to like explain it. Like we never need to. And I do think this is something I should save for X-Men Origins Wolverine, but I wonder which Weapon X comic it was.
Barry Windsor Smith one or the
I think so, but there's an implication that the reason he forgot is actually part of his healing factor. That his brain just like, this is so fucked up. We're just going to overwrite this shit.
I think that's like, Paul Jenkins. I think it's like that. Yeah, like they said that it's either a trauma response or that like, no, I remember that. Yeah,
I think that's such a good. He doesn't need a fucking adamantium bullet to the brain. It's just
horrible.
Two things. One, you've got a healing factor, and so the trauma response. Also, you're old as shit, and so the brain, you're just going to forget.
He's not going to remember everything. Yeah.
And that's the combination of the two things. Like, sorry, dude, it's that information's just gone now. That's you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right because I think like because then you can do stuff like maybe Wolverine actually did fucked up things to Sabretooth, which is why it's him. You know what I mean? More mileage, but that's us, everybody. That's our time. The last thing, though.
Yeah.
This is a short. This is a section that will get longer as we go on. We'll need to make more time for it. Generation X ranking the 2 movies we've watched so far.
Yeah, I mean it's got to be X-Men 2, X-Men Pride of the X-Men.
yeah. Yes, correct. That's correct. Yes, that is the ranking. Although, again, watching it again, I think X2 is much closer to X1 than I originally gave it credit for.
It's a lot more like it. It's not a quantum leap from the first one. I remember X-Men 2. I'm like, this blows X-Men 1 out of the water. And it's like seeing them so close together. I'm like, this is basically just the natural progression of the first movie.
Yeah, still good. But
still good.
And in some ways, it almost made me feel more negative about this movie because watching X1, I was like, oh, this is better than I remember. X2 is like, oh, this isn't quite. Like you said, it's like Quantum Leap. I remember it as
right. It's good.
Yeah.
But I see the strings now. Like there are a lot of missed opportunities still, despite the awesome moments. And those awesome moments are still there. I mean, like the White House sequence, the Magneto freedom sequence, the Wolverine slaughter sequence, like all those sequences are still just as cool.
Yep.
Although they could be shot better. Than a lot of sequences that take place in the MCU where you're like, that's the coolest sequence that I've ever seen in the MCU.
Yep.
But I think I care more about the things that are happening in the MCU because they've spent the time to make me care more about what's happening to these characters.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. And again, and at least the basic function of like And I actually think Guardians 3 did a better job of this than previous Guardians movies. Like, here's this character's thing, here's this character, here's their function, this person's function, this person's function, this person's function.
Yes.
There's the personality quirk. There's, it's like,
yes,
basic. You just need that basic thing to like hook into, like, who's your favorite. You need to be able to have that conversation of who's your favorite.
Who's your favorite Golden Girl? Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. that's an important and if I can leave Kevin Feige with nothing else, that's what you need to nail with X-Men.
Yeah.
Nerds have been debating on playgrounds for generations. Who's your favorite X-Men?
And why?
It can't just be Wolverine. Like,
it can't always be Wolverine. You got to have Cyclops fans. You got to create. You're going to have to create Cyclops fans.
Yep. That's your mission. You got to create Cyclops fans. All right. Sal, before we go, where can the kids find you?
Swing on by youtube.com/comic-pop, and you can catch all of the content my friends and I make up.
Boom. Check it out. You can find me, DJ Talks Trash. You can find the show everywhere that matters at Only Stupid Answers, but on Twitter, you're going to want to yank out the vowels from stupid. This is our monthly live show. We will be back next month talking about X3. So stay tuned for that. If you want to see more of Sal and I, we are talking about Spider-Man over at patreon.com/Only Stupid Answers. If you want to listen to this as a podcast, which is the end of, I guess, in the future, if you want to listen to this podcast, that's also over at Patreon. And we'll see you all next time. Bye, everybody.